Welcome back, everyone. This is Rough Rider, where every week we talk writing, self-publishing, and making it as an author. And today I have with me author Ben Schenkman, and he is celebrating a big day today because his second book is being released today on June 28th. So, hi, Ben. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, Joey, nice to see you.
So, yeah, I guess we can. I want to talk a lot about your book because it is coming out. So I want to try to get as much hype for that as I possibly can. So I think that the genre that you write in, I think would appeal to a lot of the people that follow me
Oh,
on here. I saw in your author bio that you write urban fantasy, and I have
mhm.
even though I'm not a fantasy writer or even really a reader of fantasy too much, I have a very big fantasy author following apparently. So I think that people are going to find your stuff interesting. So yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we kind of dive into things?
Yeah, sure. I have a little bit of an odd background. So I've been publishing for the last I guess I've been writing for the last year change. The first book, which is called My Boss is the Devil, uh, came out in December, just at the end of last year. But it's actually a book that I've been working on for like 10 years, as many authors do. In the time where I wasn't publishing books, yeah, I run a professional fire dancing group. I also have a very mundane day job working in the software and IT industry, and so on. So yeah, I've got a lot of kind of varied experience, but I've really only been publishing, and writing towards publishing within the last year.
Cool. Well, it looks like you've been fairly productive with your writing because when I was taking a look at your books, it looks like your first book, My Boss is the Devil. So this is part of a series.
Mm-hmm.
The series is The Devil You Know, which I
Yeah.
like that name a lot. I really like the name for the second book a lot too. But we'll get to that though. The first book, My Boss is the Devil, came out at the end of last year. It was like the end of December, I think, right?
Yes. Yep. Right
And
before the new
then
year.
yeah, and then the sequel to that just came out today.
Yep.
I want to ask you a couple of things because I've talked to other people about basically just like how fast or slow of a writer we all are.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a very self-admittedly slow writer. My first book didn't take super long, but that's I was writing it with my co-author and best friend, so it was kind of a collaborative thing. So it didn't take too long, but the second one, the other one, which is unrelated, that one I wrote just completely by myself, but I swear I was working on that on and off for like 6 or 7 years. So I'm always amazed when people are and like really just like impressed and envious of people who are able to write fairly quickly. But I don't know if that's the case for you though. So your books, were released not super far apart, like about like 6 or so months apart. So had you written both of them already or were like mostly done with both of them? Or did you finish the first one and then put it out and then you're like on a roll and you're able to kind of powerhouse through a second one?
So it's kind of a funny story. The first full draft of My Boss is the Devil, which so the current book is around like 73,000 words. The original draft, which was like 63, I wrote in during National Novel Writing Month in 2014, so like 10 years ago. And then it kicked around in various unpublished formats. I got it edited. I tried doing some querying. I got really discouraged with that whole process. And then I shelved it because life happens and didn't pick it up again until, probably about a year ago. And honestly, it's because of TikTok. I was watching some content of some women reading prose written by men, but it was like, more of the romance style stuff. But it was so terrible, just god awfully bad. And I said to myself watching this, like, I wrote a book. It it can't be nearly as bad as any of these. And these are published. And so I got a fire lit under myself, and over the next like probably 6 to 8 months, I added 10,000 words, did a bunch of editing myself, got a group of beta readers and friends to kind of go through it. And then I was getting ready to publish, you know, I had planned to release it at the end of the year in December. And then National Novel Writing Month of last year in 2023 happened. And I wrote 60,000 words of the second book, which I'm glad you like the title. It's Dueling Shoulder Angels. I wrote all of that during National Novel Writing Month. And then but then ironically, it took me another month to write the next 15,000 words to finish it up. So yeah, the first book sat around mostly finished for a long time, but then the second one leapt nearly fully formed onto the page in the course of 2 months.
Nice. That's pretty fast. And the fact that you wrote, did you say 60,000 words in 1 month?
Yeah.
For, so by the way, I was talking to someone else about this, how like apparently ignorant I am of this stuff, that I didn't even know that the National Novel Writing Month was a thing until maybe like really not that long ago. I just kept seeing like however people abbreviate it was like nano
NaNoWriMo.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. Yeah, I'm always like I had seen that and just really knew what it was, and I was just always wondering like what are these people talking about? But that's crazy to be able to write that much in 1 month. So like I'm really impressed by that. And um, when you're making progress like that, like do you set because this subject comes up a lot, it seems like online. Do you set like goals for yourself in terms of like word count or just like time spent writing during the day? Like, I don't know if you really had a schedule or if it was just sort of like you were able to just like get through that many words just because you were kind of like on a creative rush there and there wasn't really any structure to it. It was just coming out of you like that.
So Nano does that for people in that you have a set word count you have to hit every day, otherwise you won't make it. The goal of Nano is to write 50,000 words. I did a bit better than that. Now let's talk about my normal process when I'm not like hell bent on writing a novel in a single month. So I'm actually in first round edits for the third book.
Nice.
That I wrote starting in February. I think I probably started it, and I just finished the first draft of it like 2 weeks ago. So that's more like 4.5 to 6 months for maybe a more sustainable pace. Because like I have my son, he's 8. I have a day job. I have other hobbies. My goal is to just write something every day if I can. And there are days that I don't, but like some days I'll hit a really good stride and like 2,000 words will just like fall out of me. And then there are other days I'll be like, well, I'm done. And like I did 300 words and that was it. So like I try not to beat myself up too much about word count because some days it's going to be easier than others. And the reality is I'm not under a time, like I'm not doing a writing challenge. I'm not under a time constraint. I don't have a publisher knocking on my door for my manuscript. So I think as long as I'm trying to write every day, it works out pretty well. But on average, like if I'm sitting down to write, I'm gonna get somewhere between like 500 to 2,000 words.
And that's still pretty good. Like I have a hard time with word count goals. Like I feel like you never really predict how long it's going to take you to write that because like there are some days where I just feel really creative and 5,000 words is nothing. Like I can write it really, really quickly and it just flows right out of you. Like you don't even have to sit there stumbling over everything. It's just coming right out. And then other days where writing even 500 words is like pulling teeth. It's horrible. And that might take me like 3 hours to do that one, and some other day like 5,000 words it would take me like an hour. So part of that I feel like is just like bipolar mania for me, like honestly. But those are the good days creatively. But yeah, like it's just writing as much as you can, or like as often as you can, I think is probably at least it is sometimes just a better practice than trying to force yourself to write a certain amount. Like just being creative at all is always a good thing. Um, so you're talking about being in your draft for the third novel now. So when I was looking at your website before this interview, and I saw your I'd seen someone else do this too. I had never really seen it before. Maybe it's common and I'm just not aware of it. But having a page for people to sign up to be ARC readers is a
Mm.
pretty cool idea to me. I had never really thought about that before. And again, maybe this is something that people do frequently, but um, I always ended up going like the kind of like standard route of it's like, oh, the people in my personal life, I just asked them to read it. But I think that having a sign up page like that where you could get like basically perfect strangers to read this, like they're going to be a little more objective than
Mm.
someone who is close to you who might be a little bit concerned about hurting your feelings or something. So like have you found it really beneficial to have people who maybe aren't necessarily close to you in your personal life reading your books in that way? Like, has that really helped you a lot in kind of shaping the story? Like, did you get good feedback?
Mm. So there's a difference between beta reading and ARC reading. So ARC reading, it, so beta reading is when you need feedback. Do you see any large plot holes? How's the pacing? Do the twists make sense? Did I telegraph things too soon? Like that's beta reading. And I do have a smaller group of people that I tend to have that kind of feedback from. ARC reading is really more about generating reviews of the book to help uh, bring other readers to the book. So, and this is where I think some authors they get it a little twisted because I've heard some negative press from ARC readers complaining about like the quality of the arcs that they get because like they're getting these manuscripts that are basically unedited and like that's not the intention of an arc read. Like it's an advanced reader copy. Like yeah, sure, maybe the cover art's not finalized, maybe your chapter art isn't all there, but like the book is done. For the most part my readers they find like the two typos that my editor and my proofreaders missed. Uh, but I will say like getting feedback from them just on whether they enjoyed the book and whether they'll help promote it is incredibly validating. Because yeah, it's hey, someone that is not related to me or has any social relationship to me whatsoever read and enjoyed this book. Like it's 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 a thrill.
Mm-hmm.
And you said bipolar. I mean, but I'm ADHD. So many authors and friends of mine are neurodivergent, neurospicy of some kind, and like we all just want people to like our stuff. So yeah, getting ARC readers to read your books and review them is it's great. And yeah, I got a piece of feedback on the second book in some of the recent ARCs. It's no spoilers or anything, but they basically said, yeah, this book could stand alone. And I didn't actually think the second book could stand alone from the first, but like two different reviewers said, yeah, you don't have to read the first one, which is actually really important information for me to have if someone's like, oh, do I need to pick up the first in the series? And my answer can now be, well, it will be better if you do, but if you don't want to, it's still a good book.
So for a book that your first book's been out for about 6 months, and you actually have a pretty good number of reviews for it. Like I know what it's like to struggle to get people to actually write one. So yeah, like that is an issue that it will always drive me crazy. But like did the having a sign up for ARC readers actually help with getting those reviews up? Like I'm not sure how it works just because I've never actually done it. Like do you kind of people will read the book ahead of time and then do they say that they'll post a review, or are these like reviews that you're getting from them just like directly where they're telling you what they thought?
No, they're supposed to post it on whatever. So basically, when you sign up with me, at least, you have options as far as like where it is that you're committing to write a review, whether it's Goodreads or Amazon or BookBub. And then the idea is once the book's live, you post your review. I sometimes hear from ARC readers who want to share their review ahead of time, not for approval. Like these are honest reviews from people. All they're doing is getting an early copy of the book in order to do it. But the first book, I didn't have a strong ARC team. That was my first self-published book. I didn't know about ARC readers before I published the book. So I was actually like chasing my tail on getting reviews. So it wasn't as natural of a process, you know, and it's hard getting the number of reviews that I did on the first book. I'm hoping that all of the people that said they were going to review the second one do, but you know, I'm going to have to follow up with people, and then eventually I'm also, you know, there's other services that you can use. They don't write reviews, but like there's one called Pubby where you basically spend points to get your book out there for people to elect to read and then review. So again, it's all honest reviews. There are plenty of people who post bad reviews on Pubby, so it's not like you're not paying for reviews. That's against terms of service for, you know, anything.
Yeah, basically everything. Yeah.
Just in case, you know, Jeff Bezos is watching, we know it's against the terms of service.
So you said something before about what your ARC readers were telling you about your second book, saying that it can stand alone from the first one. So I actually noticed that you had an author note about your first book, I think, that said that you kind of have a personal distaste for a series with books that end on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So what I feel similarly. So so I understand that, but you like really wanted to make sure that people could read the first book and then not have to be like sitting there waiting for the second one, like biting their fingernails and everything, right?
Yeah. I mean, like so for and you know, shameless plug. So yeah, so for My Boss is the Devil.
I was gonna say, go right ahead, plug it as much as you want.
So this is the story of a young barista named Nick who is living a dead-end life with zero prospects, and he happens to have a lot of untapped potential, and he gets a job offer from the devil to come work for him, explore newfound influence. And the twist is that the devil wants to let him do good deeds because Nick really, in his heart of hearts, wants to help people. And so the whole book is based on this question of, well, what if the devil isn't really the bad guy? What is bad in this situation? And so, you know, Nick goes through a number of different challenges where he's encountering, you know, some actual evil. And what does he do? Do the ends justify the means? And in the end, he makes some choices that the reader will feel very satisfied with the ending. That being said, Dueling Shoulder Angels, this book picks up a little ways down the road from the last one. So this is 2 years later, and it picks up. It's still Nick, but it takes one of the supporting characters, Amy, who is the romantic interest in the first book. Amy is a much larger character in the second book. This includes some of her growth, and then also a perhaps unexpected redemption arc that leads to, again, another, I feel, satisfying conclusion that is clear that there is another book, but there's no cliffhangers. This book is done. This story is done. Now we're going to move on to the next one in the next book, but like, you're not waiting to find out what happens.
That's kind of what I did with my sci-fi novel, where I'm planning for it to be part of a trilogy. I only wrote the first one so far. I'm like a couple chapters into the second one, but I wanted it to be that book was pretty much finished. Like that story, you know, that's done. But you're trying to make it kind of clear that there's going to be ones after it. So I totally get where you're coming from with trying to write in that way. And by the way, I love a good Faustian theme. So that's pretty cool to me.
So if
So
even if you're not a fantasy reader, I think you would like the first book. It's urban fantasy, but it's low fantasy in that it's not all about the supernatural. The supernatural exists, and you get a taste for what like supernatural power is, but it's not like we're not Jim Butcher slinging spells around. It's not that kind of urban fantasy. But then in this one, it's like so we also so I'm layering them. So the first book we have one point of view, we have Nick, and we have one supernatural figure, we have the devil. In book two, we have Nick and we have Amy. This book has two points of view in it, and it's all first person POV, standard for urban fantasy. But we don't just have the devil; we also introduce God. And then
oh,
the third,
okay. I like
and
that.
the third book, if you want to know what the title on that one is, I think you'll like this one too. The third book is the working title is now Too Many Gods in the Kitchen.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
And in this one, we introduce a third point of view. So now there's three main characters. It's not going to go more than that. I can't stand a book that has like more than three POVs. You're just going to lose me. But then we're introducing let's just say we're introducing other supernatural figures that are maybe outside of the Abrahamic
Nice. Okay.
area.
Yeah, no, that's intriguing to me. And I want to ask you this because I said in another interview that like I feel like a lot of these videos are going to be me learning about the fantasy genre like in the middle of these interviews because I'm kind of like I've seen the Lord of the Rings, I've watched Game of Thrones, I've read Game of Thrones, I read the Lord of the Rings, but like that's kind of the extent of my exposure to this. So I know that just like sci-fi has a ton of different subgenres like within that. There's
Mm-hmm.
like hard science fiction, soft science fiction, there's all these different kinds. For fantasy, like could you kind of explain to me and then also to anyone out there who doesn't know what like how would you describe urban fantasy, or and then you also said low fantasy, so like how would you explain that as well, and
Yeah.
and then kind of like what draws you specific like to those two types of fantasy in particular?
Okay. So within the fantasy like genre, you have epic fantasy or high fantasy, which is like elves and dwarves and dragons and stuff. Then you have what's called contemporary fantasy, which is actually even though I don't know how new it is, it seems a newer umbrella genre. So contemporary fantasy is fantasy that takes place in the modern day, because and usually in real places. It's contemporary. Speculative fiction is like made up worlds. So contemporary fantasy has subgenres, of which urban fantasy is a subgenre of contemporary fantasy, because urban fantasy is fantasy that takes place in an urban setting, and the urban setting has to be in some way like integral to the book. Like it's important that the setting is urban. It doesn't have to be contemporary, like time wise. Like you can have urban fantasy that's historical, if it's
So it
in
could be like industrial revolution like
yeah,
London or
it's
something. Oh, okay.
that's still urban. It's still but yeah, you're urban fantasy is specifically happens in a city like Harry Dresden and Jim Butcher. His stuff, it's all in Chicago. We have other people who they pick New York as their city. In my case, I went to so I'm in Western Massachusetts, but I went to school and lived in Southern Connecticut for a long time, and I went to college in New Haven. And so New Haven, Connecticut is my city. That's the one that I write in. Like I have plans for future books, all of which are still set in New Haven. It's my Stephen King. It's my main. So
Cool.
yeah, and as far as like low and high magic, like low magic settings are where like magic exists, but maybe not everyone has it, and it's not necessarily super integral to what's going on. Like high magic is everyone's like a spell wielder, and magic's getting thrown around left and right. It, you know, someone, my book's actually part of the self-published fantasy blog off contest right now. And someone did like a first chapter read of it and called out the fact that like we don't actually need anything supernatural in your first chapter. Like he didn't mind. Like he called my writing smooth, which is very sweet. But like my book is not the one where it's like you're gonna go in expecting like the devil to light someone on fire in the first chapter. Like it's not that kind of book.
It's not like that kind of in your face dramatic sort of magic. So
Yeah, it's been referred to as like on the cozier side of urban fantasy. Like there are still stakes, bad things happen, but it's not like world-ending stakes. I will say the stakes ramp up as the books go. So again, layering on things like book one is a distinct book. Book two builds on that, and three as well.
nice. So I don't know if you can answer this, but do you have any idea of when the third book might be coming out?
I am planning to have it out, if not earlier, at least sometime in October.
Oh, nice. Okay, so not like super long from now. So,
No,
um, will you do? I don't know if you did pre-orders for your books so far, but did you think you'll try doing that for the third one?
I might. So I open pre-orders only like a week before book launch, to coincide with Stuff Your Kindle Fantasy Day that I participated in for book one.
Okay,
So
yeah, that makes
I
sense.
I was hoping to drive some traffic to book two for people who picked up book one for free. And
Mhm.
yeah, I got a handful of orders, so I
Yeah.
was happy enough about it.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'm excited. I really do want to check these out because like I said, I love like Faustian themed stories. So that's always interesting to me. I mean, I'm like, I would consider myself Christian. So like the anything that is kind of like God and devil sort of related is interesting to me. And I know that you kind of turn it on its head by um you're exploring like the morally gray areas and questioning like good and evil. Is it a matter of perspective, I guess. So it would be interesting to me to see something that you're depicting someone making the deal with the devil essentially, but then not necessarily having it be that the devil really is just kind of this deceitful and really out just to get your soul kind of guy. So it would be cool to see like a different take on that because you don't see it too often. Usually when it is a story like that, they're pretty consistent. So this is a nice, it's a different take on it, and I think that that's really interesting. So I would like to check that out at some point. And the covers are really nice. Like, where did you like that subject comes up a lot. How did you get your cover? I'm just gonna start asking everyone that
So
because I feel like some people have issues with finding a good one. So how did you get them?
these look really nice next to each other too.
They do like having two opposite sides of the color wheel is a cool idea. They work really well together.
So indie authors have a lot of different options for covers, and I went through. So there's this company. I don't remember exactly where they are. I think they're in Eastern Europe somewhere, but they're called Miblart or Mibble Art. But they have a budget arm called getcovers.com. And if all you're doing is an ebook, which I'm not, but like you can get a custom cover based on stock images. Basically, you pick like three stock images. You say, hey, these are reminiscent of my cover. Like, here's some idea about my book. Here's the stock images that I like. Uh, do a design, and then they do a design, and it's $35. And
That is not bad at all. Like
uh,
that's
uh,
that
uh,
sometimes stock art costs that much. So
yeah, and it's all like it's all licensed in that they own the licenses to use them, so there's no licensing issues with your covers. Um, Unlimited revisions, as in they will go back and forth with you until they get it right, or you say, you know what, I don't like this and I'd like my money back, and they have a money back guarantee too. So I did both my covers with them, but I will say you get what you pay for. in that you have to be invested in the design process. Like, I doubt you can see it, but like, oh, maybe you can. So like, see this green space here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Literally, I was going back and forth with the designer saying, no, the arm needs to go up by like 5 more degrees to create more empty space between them, because like they're going to throw you a design, and like rarely is it going to be right the first time. And I think on the first cover, I went back and forth with them probably 15 times. On the second cover, I think I went back and forth with them like 25 times. So it's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't give the right inputs, you're not going to get a cover that you're happy with. But I love my covers.
Yeah, they look really nice. So I think that everyone listening, if you've ever had trouble getting a cover, like at least check that out as a resource, because that is an issue that I have seen people face where they tried to make it like, I hate saying this. So I had made a video once that I was looking at like free cover generators just on YouTube. And and I don't necessarily advise doing that. It was just more like for people who really feel like they have no other choice, then like here are some things you can use. And one of them is the one that KDP has to make the like when you do an
Oh,
ebook or
their
anything.
cover designer. Yeah, I've never used it.
It's awful. Yeah, it's awful. So rather than doing that, if you're able to spare, $35, like I would strongly suggest that you do that, because when you do it yourself, sometimes it just really doesn't come out that great. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
frankly, you'd be better off going on Fiverr and paying for someone to do a cover design than using a free cover generator. Because the other problem you might run into with those kinds of a number of different issues. One, if it's an AI, if it's a generative AI cover generator, that's wholly problematic in general. Like I'm going to be the first to say out loud that I'm very much against generative AI for things like book art or any art, frankly, whether it's the written word or the covers. But then from a purely practical standpoint, there's a whole lot of IP and licensing issues around AI generated imagery, in that if you use a cover from a free cover generator, you may not end up owning that book later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like these were ones that had kind of galleries of stock images that you could use and then let you just kind of edit
Yeah.
where the text was. And I was saying in it that when you do something like that, there's always the chance that someone else is using the exact same, like, stock image for
Mm-hmm.
their cover. And that's not always an ideal situation to be in. And
Yeah.
I really I want to do a video at some point about generative AI, because not too long ago, just out of curiosity, I really don't use Chat GPT for anything. I used it to help me write some roast jokes for my old boss once, but that was all. But I decided, I was like, let me screw around with this and see how this would be if you're trying to get like advice from AI on fixing like some character issues like for a book. So I just copied and pasted all of my book notes into it, and then said, tell me if it would make sense like that this character did this, just hoping to God that it would have like a really stupid answer and that it wouldn't be able to do it. And it scared the shit out of me with it, because it was saying all this stuff that about the character, like, oh, it would make more sense like this. And I was like, damn it, that's like a really good idea. And I felt horrified with myself that I even messed around with it. I just wanted to see. I was just more curious than anything. But it scares me to think that there may come a point where I don't want to say, like, I don't think human authors will ever be obsolete, but it scares me that we won't be so unique anymore. And if people can just go on there and just have something write like stuff for them, like I feel like you would have a kind of strong opinion on that. So
I do, and if you want to have me back at any point to talk about that, but
yes.
I mean, if I can, just my 2 cents on this. The people who developed these fancy algorithms have admitted that they don't work unless they are trained on a huge amount of material that they do not own. So they've taken a ton of data, including a ton of data that they do not have any fair use rights to. So copyrighted, trademarked, just because it's visible doesn't mean that you're allowed to do commercial things with it. They've taken all of this data and then they have put together these algorithms that can churn out objectively mediocre work. You know, if you look at some of the greats like Neil Gaiman and others have commented on generative AI when it comes to book writing, and that why would you read something that is soulless and objectively mediocre? And I generally agree with that. The problem is, so A, we're already not unique. Like there are so many people publishing books these days. The good news is like the independent and like the indie authors, the self-published authors, it's a great community. It's people that want to support each other, help each other understand the ropes and how to do it. I have not found a community as supportive and open with its secrets as self-publishing. But we're already, it's a huge ocean full of fish. Like that's actually one of the good things about publishing is there's always going to be more people who want to read books, and there's always going to be more books to read. So yeah, like competition's fierce, but I don't know. I think there's too many problems around generative AI, not just the fact that it's mediocre, but more so the fact that it's in many ways just frankly unethical, and no one can tell me how it is. You know, you
Yeah, it's
ask,
kind of like theft in a lot of ways. Yeah.
It is. So like every time you say generative AI is theft because of all of the trained data, you'll get 5 people that pop their heads out of the woodwork to say, well, actually, and like try to explain to you why it's totally fair that they stole all of that data. But like if I went to the Amazon website and just because I could see it with my eyeballs and I pulled the Amazon logo and then I refactored it into the, you know, Amagon logo, and it looked, you know, kind of like it, but it wasn't. But that was my company, and I used that. Like I'd be sued in 5 seconds. But somehow ChatGPT and OpenAI are like not facing
Untouchable.
massive
Yeah.
lawsuits.
Yeah. I feel bad. Like I see a lot of artists on Twitter, like people who put their art up there, and they're like really, really like have their torches and pitchforks out about this, and I don't
Yeah,
blame them at all. And I know
I
that like you can list your art on something like DeviantArt. I think
mhm.
it'll have it where you can like say, oh, this cannot be used for AI, but I can't imagine like they could probably take it anyway. Like I don't know how that would be restricted, but I also am not an IT person. I don't really know anything about how that works. But
So there's 2 main tools that artists. So number one, like my partner's an artist, and she's on DeviantArt. If you look at if you look in the notes of book 1, she does my chapter art, like the little icons that are in
oh,
front of
nice.
each chapter. It's adorable stuff. But there's 2 tools that artists use primarily. One's new, so they use Glaze, which is like a tool that basically protects your work so that it can't be fed into algorithms like that. But there's a new one called Nightshade that MIT was also working on. The idea is that Nightshade, when applied to images, then poisons the algorithm that's trying to use it. And every time they generate something using that data, it gets worse and worse. There are subreddits dedicated to breaking Nightshade and Glaze, and so like it's this constant battle between artists who would just like to create art and maybe make not even a modest living, and tech bros that want to be big picture people and then not actually learn how to be artists. It's no contest. Like I will come down on the side of the artist every time.
Yeah, it's kind of the whole thing is just like a moral quagmire. But I mean, at least we're among other creative human beings here and not
Who we're
computers.
we're actually
And
typing on
yeah,
keyboard.
we're actually writing like mistakes and all. And I will entirely agree with you when you were saying that the indie author community online has been like so unbelievably supportive in a way that I really didn't expect, especially on TikTok, which I was initially reluctant to even go on, just because you hear a lot of negative things, and I always was like I'll be fully honest and say, like, before I went on there, I was like, these are like a bunch of crazy people, and I was like, there's no way. I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna get along with anyone on there, especially since like I tend to be like third party politically. I'm usually like the outsider on things. I just thought it was gonna be just a nightmare, and then when I went on, I was like, ah, whatever, I'll try it. And I went on there, and I'm just dealing, with like the indie author community, the writing community on there, and it's like the nicest group of people I've ever dealt with. And I don't see any drama. I don't see any like nasty comments. Oh, I haven't, thank God. But I'm sure it's there. There's always drama when there's people involved. But it's not like this really, really. There's not a lot of vitriol. I don't see a lot of people going for each other's throats. And instead of people being like really competitive with each other and like oh, how dare people like pay attention to this person's book and not mine, people really seem like they do want to support each other and kind of find, it's like a win-win for everyone, when we support each other, when especially when you're up against like big corporate publishers and stuff who can very easily dominate things. So and the authors have to stick together. So it's
They
been
do.
a really good experience, and I feel kind of stupid that I went into it with some prejudice that was clearly um, shouldn't have been there. And I mean, I still think there's crazy people on TikTok. It just happens to not be in that community, thank God. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it's been nice to really get to know people in here, especially since like I didn't really do a lot of interacting with people too much until the last few weeks. Like before that, I was just posting stuff. I'm like, oh, I hope people see it, and like that was all. So yeah, it's been cool, and and it's been really. I guess we're kind of low on time now, but it's been cool to hear. Like it's been cool having all these other indie authors so far, talk about their books. But yours, I do want to check out because it does look really interesting to me. And then, as someone who this would be, I think, probably my first urban fantasy novel that I've ever read actually. So yeah, I'm gonna check that out. And so let everyone know where they can find your book. And if there's any like links you'd want them to follow. I'm going to put all of this in the description, obviously. But yeah, let everyone know your books and where they can find them.
Yeah, that's great. So My Boss is the Devil is the first in the series. So again, it's the devil you know. Uh, both My Boss is the Devil and Dueling Shoulder Angels are now available on Amazon. So in ebook, on Kindle Unlimited. So if you're subscribed to Kindle Unlimited, they are free for you. They are available in paperback and hardcover. And I am, because I'm a crazy person, once book 3 is with some beta readers, I'm actually going to start recording the audiobooks.
Oh, that's really cool. How do you plan? I've been thinking about doing that too. But how are you? Like, would you want to read it out like as the author and narrate it yourself, or would you do something like Audible has their kind of self-publishing thing?
I did a bunch. So I put it out for audition on ACX, which is the Audible exchange, because I wanted to see what I could get and how much it would cost me. And even for a very reasonably priced producer narrator, I'm going to have 3 books. And if I do an audiobook, I'm going to want to do 3 audiobooks. And so I've been an actor. Like I've done community theater and some other things. I feel like I would be capable of doing an audiobook. I'd have a learning curve, but like I could do one. So I said, okay, I'm going to put it out on ACX for audition. I'm going to see what I get. And if what I can get for what I would have to pay isn't significantly more than what I could do myself, I'm probably going to do it myself. And I got some really good auditions back, but like it would cost me like $4,000 or more to have all three books done. And that's with a very affordable narrator. So again, like in some cases you pay more for a narrator that has a following, and I can't afford that kind of narrator. So in the end, it's if I'm going to go with either a affordable, no name, good narrator, or do it myself and learn some things, I'm going with that. So I would probably be narrating it myself.
Well, you have a good speaking voice, so I feel like
Thanks.
you like I'd listen to it. And if you already have like a little bit of an acting background, that helps you. Like I feel like I would sound horrendously bad if I were gonna record mine, but I feel like you'd be able to do it. So that would be cool to hear about, like in the future, if you do end up doing that, because I actually don't know anyone who's ever done it and recorded it themselves and done it through AEX or whatever. What is it?
ACX.
ACX.
Yeah.
So that would be cool to hear about your experience. So if you do end up doing that, let me know because I definitely want to talk about it. So
I just took some 2-inch uh, uh, mattress pad foam and created a little sound booth in the closet in this office. So like I'm
cool.
pretty sure that's where I'm going with it.
That's the direction you're going. Well, thanks so much, Ben, for being here. It was great to talk to you, especially, an author in a subgenre that I really don't know anything about. So it's always cool to learn more. So everyone, I encourage you, please check out Ben's series, The Devil You Know. The first book has been out. The second book is out today. So by the time this video is out, I guess it'll have been out for about a week or two, but definitely go check that out. Anyone who's interested in kind of a Faustian, like diving into just the gray areas of morality, anyone who's interested in that kind of like both like philosophical discussion would, I think, be interested in this. So go check it out. The links will be in the description. If you are an indie author and you're interested on appearing on this channel, please go ahead and email me at roughrider@protonmail.com. And until next time, thanks so much, everyone. God bless you all.